very focused and very. I feel like, and he wants to win every year. Everyone wants to
Sure.
win. I just feel like he's going to really want it now because it's been 2 back-to-back disappointing seasons.
True.
With NBA players on his team.
True. And, you can't not talk about the topic without not talking about all the other things that have come up, So with all the other, off the court issues or distractions, whatever it may be, I think it's going to be really important that this team comes together. Well, he was definitely all about being a good host during Friday's game. You saw him doing interviews on the Fox Network with Greg Kelser and George Blau, the Detroit Pistons Network, and again, you saw the team in full mass. There, looking at what the future could be. When you look at that team, who do you see as some people who could be potentially playing that same preseason game in the NBA in the future? Right now, really just the
Was it Gabe Brown or is it I forgot the other kid's name right now. It's on the I cannot remember his name. There's Gabe Brown and the other kid. Was it
Indiana?
Henry?
Yeah, from Indiana.
Yeah, yes, yep. So maybe those two, but it's hard to say. Especially getting into that program because who knows? He might right now go back to this is how things are going to go.
Sure,
and that might not help that player get to the next level, and it might become when they become a junior or senior. They still might get drafted and have a a career in the NBA. But I don't see a situation where there's a kid that is a Miles Bridges, Jaren Jackson.
Yeah, I think that's a tough thing. Now the Cleveland Cavaliers, they were in the practice, so they did show some interest. So you talk about a Nick Ward, you talk about a Josh Langford, guys like that who had some great experience and have been on some radars. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they just. Are able to get out and get this season going and whatever attention they may have received in the past, it not be a reason to hold them up. So it was interesting seeing them all out there, and I think everybody is just as excited about the Michigan State basketball season as anything else.
Yeah, I think real quick, and I think they're going to end up being a great team.
Sure.
Just with Ward being a junior, Langford being a junior, you got Cassius being a junior, then you got the incoming freshmen that are pretty good as well that can contribute. So I definitely feel like they're going to definitely do well this
I think
year.
they're better. I agree. I think they're probably better when there's less expectation because they can work up. Because all the expectation was on them last year. And, clearly what we saw was Coach Izzo probably would agree that the way he approached things, you needed to approach it somewhat differently, considering all the things that were happening. But hindsight is 20/20. But when you talk about those, general managers and other, basketball people from these NBA teams taking their time to sit in a practice, I think there's some interest out there, and we can see. And then nowadays you have the whole part that I guess before we even go right into the NBA discussion, if that's okay with you, there's a G League aspect. And I was very fortunate to run into a new acquaintance of mine, the general manager for the Grand Rapids Drive, and we got to talk at the game a little bit, and it was just interesting hearing his perspective, and I always try to share that, especially when you talk about people who are like the freshman tryouts that are taking place, and still people who are on the cusp and can't get into the NBA outright through the draft, so there's this opportunity with the G League, and they're actually having a draft coming up where each GM has to recommend 3 names that they just put out there to go into this draft. And it may be someone that they have their eye on that they necessarily may not be able to get, but it's an interesting concept.
Wow.
So still, even after, people have walked across the stage and shook Adam Silver's hand, the commissioner of the NBA, there's still an opportunity. So I just thought one thing he was interested that he stated, and I wanted to share with some of the individuals out here as we try to segue down from the high school aspect to the collegiate, a little bit of NBA, then getting into the NBA, is that he said players should play at their best and not the best of another player. So he was emphasizing that, many times players may say, well, as long as I'm the best player at Waverly, as long as I'm the best player in Michigan, as long as I'm the best player in the Midwest, as opposed to saying, how can I be my very best? And that really, touched me as far as mindset and mentality and preparation as far as that. But, what do you think about when you hear someone make that kind of statement? I mean,
I think that is something that probably a lot of us, fall into, just whether it's an athlete or just as an individual, just having a comparison thing or just saying, hey, we just want to reach this level.
Sure.
And so it becomes more of a, is it a goal or is it a task? Is it why, you know, I guess it's kind of a hard balance to strike because, you know, we have a goal, you know, we want to reach, we want to be the best player of whatever league or the state, the region. So sometimes you might get capped at that instead of, you know, pushing past it. So it's definitely something that I think that most people, again, just every individual should really just be focused on improving every day.
Sure.
You know, just how can I be better than the day before? How can I just keep on utilizing my skills and enhancing them, work on my weaknesses, and obviously keep on developing my strengths.
Sure. Well, I guess we can go back to the coach question: are you evolving or devolving? That can also relate to players. As a player, are you evolving or devolving? Are you just saying, you know, once you get past all those other people that we stated, all those goals, being the best at my high school, being the best in college, etc., you know, are you saying, am I working towards my personal best? And I think that's something really tough to call upon. But, you know, moving on to the NBA, you know, it was interesting seeing a lot of the G League community there, keeping an eye on things. But, you know, when you talk about the game, it was really cool. I was there as a guest of Cleveland, and I'm appreciative of their front office and their GM, Kobe Altman, for extending that courtesy. And I was able to be right behind the bench. And it's funny because as a sports psychology consultant, most people may want a seat that has a greater vantage point of the whole experience. But my thing is, how close can I be to the players? I mean, close enough to see J.R. Smith walk across the court with his Chuck Taylors tied up, you know, and pointing what's up to everybody, and also being able to see the interaction between the players. But, you know, the one person who really stood out to me before we get to the Pistons who won the game, and I think it's a good connection because I'll start with Colin Sexton, and then when we get to the Pistons, we can talk about Blake Griffin to keep me on task. But, you know, he's very impressive. He's the young bull. I mean, to be honest, you know, you can't downplay. I mean, someone like him, you think about it, he only played his freshman year, so technically he should only be a sophomore in college. So what does that make him? What, you know, 20 years old?
Yeah, maybe 20 years old.
Maybe 20 years old. And he's out here. However, a highlight that may circulate, may not, Ish Smith, guard for the Detroit Pistons. He put a crossover and a step back jumper on him. Yeah, buzzer beater in the third, you know, and it was something that excited the crowd, but I was quick to take advantage of my vantage point and say, well, let me look at Colin and see how he responds. And he had the biggest smile on his face. And it was a smile that I would dare say, saying multiple things, saying, yeah, he got me good, but I'm in the NBA. And he go get his, you know, and that's just what I took from connecting with that personality. But, you know, when you hear something like that happen with a player, whether you're, because technically he's a rookie, but we can kind of relate that to being a freshman. Coach, how do you respond? And this is part of us giving back through Coach's Culture to be able to help, you know, some of our coaches out here deal with that. How do you respond if you have a really good player on your team? Somebody put a really good move on him. I mean, straight up, you know, straight up move on him. And he's coming over to you and having to deal whether you're on the road or at home. And who knows what's worse, on the road, hearing the on the road crowd say bad things, or at home, seeing your own people look the other way when you catch your homeboys, tripping.
You know, you're going to hear it later on, if not then.
So how do you help a Colin Sexton or that freshman or that new, you know, guard that you have out there in that position?
Well, you know what? I try my best to nip it in the bud. Beginning of the season.
Okay.
So I'm gonna.
How do you do that?
I'm going to reference a player that played at Waverly High School.
Okay.
Jaden Sutton. He was a varsity football player, varsity basketball player. I think he did 3 years on varsity, and he was super short.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
Just anyway. So Jaden he was competitive in every single facet. Just whether academically, football, basketball, just every drill, every sprint, everything. Just very, very, very competitive. Sometimes, obviously, it was great for the team. Sometimes it could be detrimental because you're trying to do everything you can, you know, by yourself.
Sure.
Because
going all out all the time.
Going all out all the time. So he plenty of steals. I mean, he got a million steals. I mean, he was great on defense. I mean, whether he wanted to lock somebody down or get the steal, picking them up full court. I mean, just harassing them all the time.
Okay.
In order to get all those steals, though, it goes back to what we said earlier. The greatest risk is not taking one.
Sure, you have to take
You have to, when you're playing defense, or if you're playing defense for me, you have to go all out.
Sure.
You have to sell yourself out. Right. Like, you can't think about, am I going to get crossed? Am I going to...
Sure.
somebody gonna make a good move on me. Guess what? I want you guys to beat them to the spot. If they make a move, so what? We're gonna catch back up. We might double team trap. So I would tell the players, hey, you seen Jaden? You seen all the steals he get? He averaged 3-4 steals a game. But hey, he got crossed up a couple times a game as well. However, that doesn't matter. He's still all conference, all league. Still putting up this many amount of points. He's still starting, finishing the games.
Starting and finishing, right.
At the end of the day, yeah, guess what? He laughs about it after the game. He's on Twitter. Like, yep, he got me, you know. However, he got 3-4 steals. He can say he got this many assists, this many points. So what? Again, to bring it all back home is that I'm trying to tell the kids, like, it's going to happen. It happened to Jordan. That happens to LeBron.
You're right, but you know the look I just had was saying, wow, how interesting how. You know, he became empowered by taking the approach that you started at the top of the season. And I'll repeat for our coaches out there, that may be a great approach because sometimes we can get caught up in the moment and our response may be like, oh, he got you, man, you know. But you got to keep that composure, that, you know, Spartan composure, that stoicism, or just be able to say, you know, okay, let me stay locked in. And one thing I find myself doing with athletes, and another reason why I feel my services are so needed, because when that happens to a kid, you only have so long to talk to them, despite what you said at the beginning of the season, despite how you can console them, because you have to continue to coach as well as the rest of your staff. And that's what someone like me tries to come in and spend a little bit more time before they kind of get out to the wolves and people start taking advantage. So I thought that's interesting.
You know, and just going back, and even in the moment when something like that happens, it's, what did they score? 2 or 3 points. Which one? If any. They maybe they didn't even score. Are you worried about winning, or are you worried about one play? And that's just, and again, I mean, maybe it is easier said than done. And it's happened. I mean, the team that just had 19-1, there was one of my starters. I mean, we played at Lansing Catholic Central. Somebody put a move on him. He pretty much fell to his knee.
Broke him down, huh?
Yeah, broke him down.
Man.
So what?
I
mean, it was just one of those things. Just stay locked into the game. And one of the things I always preach is win the next play, win the next possession, win each possession. How are we going to win this possession?
Present.
Yeah. So
that's a great attitude to take. Because I think because coaches come from different backgrounds, different attitudes. I think it's important what you state as far as, you know, nip it in the bud, because again, we're so human, and we can also let some of our, you know, lesser self come out, and we can just kind of lose it as an adult and as a coach. And I think that goes a long way in impacting the young people personal self-esteem.
And really last thing, and you know, we can bleep this out, but like I'm saying, I don't give a fuck about that play.
Right.
What does that matter to me, and what does that matter going forward? I don't care.
That's really important.
2 craps about that.
But that's really important. It comes from you as a coach to say that doesn't impact you, because they're looking at you to say, well, is he going to be upset with me as far as what happened and went on? So that's a good one. That's good. That's a good feedback. So also, I was going to ask, getting to the Pistons, you know, you talk about Blake Griffin, man. Blake Griffin, to see him up close, I think his health is much more improved, because even though it was preseason, you see his level of physicality, man. He was banging with cats. And, you know, and maybe it was, you know, you have to think about a different matchup from Cleveland. But, no, Tristan Thompson is, you know, a marquee player, no doubt. And but Blake was banging. It was funny because the vantage point again I had, you can hear what we normally see on TV with their mouths moving. You assume, but you can hear. And Coach Tyronn Lue, I'm right behind him. He's saying, "That's a travel. That's a travel." And Blake is shouting back out, "Ain't no effing travel. Ain't no effing travel." But they just going back and forth all the time. You know, with everything that's going on. But I thought that was interesting. But Langston Galloway. You know, I don't have his stat line in front of me, man, but he had, I want to say, 5 threes, and he just lit the place up. And I saw some interesting information about him, comparing how he may play under Coach Van Gundy, or how he may have played under Coach Van Gundy, compared to how he may play under Coach Casey. And there's a question mark out there, is if there's an opportunity for him to thrive a little bit more under Coach Casey. And I was wondering what your thoughts are when it relates to how can you have the same player give or produce more under one coach compared to that under another. What do you think about that?
Well, you know what? I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, especially us talking specifically about him as well, is that one of the things that I thought about with him is that last year he was in the first year of a new contract. The biggest contract he's received. He's an undrafted player from St. Joseph. bounced around a little bit. New York had
Sure.
a couple 10-day contracts, got picked up by New Orleans, then got traded to Sacramento. So he's never really had. He's been fighting.
Sure.
He's been fighting
Sure.
this whole time to try to stay in the NBA.
Sure.
So he gets a 3-year contract, essentially $7 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he put too much pressure on himself to to perform
Sure.
under Van Gundy.
Sure.
Maybe they were expecting more of him than what he really maybe was going to provide. Because I looked at some of the stats, and when they signed him, it was after he got traded to Sacramento. He played, I think, 19 games there. And he shot, I believe like 47%.
Oh, wow.
So, however, he only shot on average 2 threes a game.
He shot 45%. So
Yes.
he's making 2 out of those 3,
Yeah,
maybe.
but before his average from three-point line was right around the league average, 33, 34%, somewhere in that range, while shooting a few more threes.
Sure.
So the other thing is, did he have and you can speak to this, maybe, did he have more pressure on himself because he had this contract now? Now he's expected to perform because he had a nice stretch at the end of the season for Sacramento where he shot 47% in those 19 games. And then also, I think the other thing is, too, is he's in everyone's, it's a refresher for everyone that they have a new coach. Just you're like, hey, you know what? I got a clean
excitement
slate.
and all that.
Exactly. But going back to what you said is how can a player? It goes back to what we talked about earlier. Is it encouragement? Is it the way that a coach talks to you? Because outside of the X's and O's, there's the relationship part of it that some people get into and some people don't. Aside from the X's and O's.
Right. No, you made all excellent points. Boy, you really did your research on that. You knew that stat line all the way through. That's great, man. But it's funny. One other dynamic I want to add, and the way you ended that talking about the relationship, is one thing I think was a good point, is that in my brief time around the Pistons under Van Gundy, and I'm appreciative of Coach Van Gundy for inviting me in, just as Coach Izzo had, there was a lot of tense. It was really tense around there. I mean, it really was like everybody knew what the writing was on the wall.
Right.
If we don't produce in a major way, we're probably not going to be here. I even had assistant coach, tell me that. He's like, you know what it is? We don't play, we out of here. So with that being said, you talk about the relationship and how it feels. Yeah, it's probably a huge difference between, the tension that's there with Coach Van Gundy based on whatever reason, as we all know, and him saying, I'm coming in under here, I'm hoping that it's just managed. So that's that attitude we talk about. Maybe he just wanted to survive under pressure. But when you get to a Coach Casey situation, he's saying, listen, I'm here at least for this year, 2 years to go.
Right.
I like what you're doing. Coach Casey has encouraged a very aggressive offense and shooting a great deal. We even talk about, Andre Drummond and his shooting of threes. That's going to be a discussion that may make some coaches' heart drop. But, you make an excellent point that there are a number of circumstances that probably played into that, but it seems that Langston Galloway may have potentially made the shift, as I call it, going from, surviving under pressure mentality to a thriving under pressure mentality.
Right.
And his play Friday night totally reflected a thriving mentality, and you saw that even with the bench. And true indeed, they weren't playing down in Detroit, and there was a lot of support there for Pistons fans because we're in the state of Michigan, but you clearly saw a different kind of energy going on over there.
Right, and again, it goes back to what you said, just a different mentality, the shift that he had, and maybe again, like I said, I'm a very big NBA fan. With the coaches, players, everything. So instead, Van Gundy is just somebody that's just wound up. He's just wound up all the time. He's a nitpicker. He's just. Complainer's not the word. He just is a nitpicker, and he just wants perfection all the time.
And then to that point, you add another element. He also was a front office executive too.
Right.
That's when those dual roles were there, where he was able to also have the influence. So it's not like the player is dealing with a coach.
Right.
He's dealing with an executive.
And so again, going back to what we said earlier with Langston, is that so he brought him in. So maybe Langston is like, someone finally believes in me. Gave me this contract for 3 years securely. It's not a team option and all this other type of stuff. I'm here securely, going to be here. And again, maybe he had still had the surviving mentality or put more pressure on himself than what he needed to. But going back to the coach situation, and real quick, I want to say this: I'm a huge Stan Van Gundy fan.
You gotta love Van Gundy.
I'm huge
the Van Gundy.
If you go back to my tweets from some years ago, I wanted them to hire Stan Van Gundy.
You were big on that some
Yeah,
time ago.
I'm a big Van Gundy guy.
You got the Twitter traffic to prove it, right?
Yeah, I have it. You know, but so just going back to that again, it's just, you know, with Langston going and having a shift in mentality might be something, and then again, having a different coach, and like I said, just having someone that is believes in you, and like I said, I think it's more so, in my opinion, on the player, just because, especially at that level. Not saying that the coaches don't make a difference, but I think at that level, they have to. That's why they're more into seeing more sports psychologists and things to get their mentality right to perform.
I mean, my response to that, and this is a perfect segue and setup, is that, you know, I think that they're responding to sports psychologists or mental trainers less. In a perfect comparison, if it's fair to give just my exposure to both Coach Van Gundy and Coach Casey for brief moments, when the presser is over, when they're done after the presser's talk, Coach Van Gundy's out. He's like, he'll almost knock you down walking up out of there. With the exception of, and I use Coach Casey as almost the opposite, to the point where he's going to approach you. And that's how we came in contact. You know, he was done with his pressure, and he was, you know, more so in my face and engaged, as opposed to, I got to go.
I'm gone.
Now, mind you, it's one thing to be the new guy coming in, the future is bright, it can be whatever you make, compared to the guy who has the sights over his head, and it can happen at any time.
Under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, so that was interesting to see. But I think also what we can do is we can take what you talked about, that surviving under pressure compared to thriving under pressure, and see how, from a coach's standpoint, we can try to relate that to other players. So, you know, they don't have that, you know, scarcity mindset compared to a mindset of abundance. That, you know, if I make a mistake, you know, the buzzer's going to go and I'm coming out. Compared to that, you know, how do you help your players, you know, work through something like that?
Really, I mean, it's hard for me to say. I mean, because each player is different. You know, how you talk to them, their role on the team, things of that nature. So, really, one of the things I don't do, and I tell them, I'll buzz you out if it's something about you not diving on the floor for a ball. If it's, you know, something along those lines. I'm not going to take you out for shooting a bad shot.
Okay.
I'm going to talk to you about that bad shot when you come to the sideline for a timeout, or when it is time for me to sub you out.
Right.
So the thriving under pressure thing is really just, I feel, just between the energy and practice and in the games, and I'm not answering the question as detailed as I probably should or could, but I just give out a lot of positive energy in that I believe in them, that they're going to make the right play, that there's nothing to be afraid of.
Sure. Well, no, you struck me when you made the comment that you tell someone that I'll sub you, but I'll be subbing you for not diving on the court. And I think a lot of young people don't have that kind of attitude, because their fear is that as soon as I make a mistake, and let's be honest, coaches do that. Oh, I can't believe he did that, and they're so demonstrative, and they just grabbing and shaking. The kid is looking like, man, yeah, I made a mistake. So
how do you expect a high school kid to respond to that behavior, though, is what I personally don't. And I'm not saying I don't get demonstrative, because I do.
You do.
I yell at the kids.
Sure.
I do all of those things. I do everything that you expect the Izzo might do.
Sure.
However, again, there's certain things that, like I said, I'm not taking you out because you missed a shot.
They know why you're doing it.
Exactly. And then it's more so, as long as you're doing all those other things I need you to do,
sure,
then you won't come out the game until it's time to. I'm not gonna. How do you expect the kids to perform at their best if they're looking over their shoulder, worrying about that buzzer going off?
Sure. No, I think that
why add that extra piece in their mentality between their ears, where they're thinking, man, if I don't do this, if I don't make this shot, or once I turn this ball over, I'm coming out. Like, why would you you're adding more pressure onto your kids than they already have pressure from their parents, their stepdad, their uncle, their grandparents, their friends, their girlfriend, their teachers, themselves.
True.
Why add on the extra pressure of, you mess up, you're coming out immediately? How do the kids learn from their mistakes?
You know, I'm not trying to get philosophical. I'm not trying to get political or anything. But when you pose that in the passionate way you did, and I appreciate that, I'm just really going through in my mind is, trying to answer your question, thinking, why is that? And the last thing you said is, why would you? And my response is, because I can. Now, why am I saying that? Why did I give a preference? And this is not political, but as you may know, prior to my life in this work, I was very political, and I can never forget. And depending on what our viewers and their political affiliation is, coming in contact with President Bill Clinton. I was fortunate to come in contact with him and other people on several occasions, and in an intimate setting to where there was dialogue that was interesting. And this was kind of coming off of the scandals that he supposedly had, his affairs and whatnot. And I mean, we were in really close connection. And what I'm getting at is, as he was looking around talking to a few of us, he was telling the story. You know how somebody who may be popular or just someone, or we know something about them, and they're telling you a story, and you be like, well, I know you're not going to tell that story, but it sounds like you're kind of telling that story. Right. So basically he was saying, when he was a young boy, growing up in the South, and when I would share this story publicly, people from the South would help me, because there was something about some kind of soft-backed turtles. I guess that's just something that was prevalent. Okay. Turtles with soft backs. Sounds dangerous, right? So he would step on them as a kid. And he would step on them. People say, why would you do that? Why did you step on those turtles? And his response was, because I could. And he said that, and he looked me in the eyes. He said, I said, you talking about that woman, man? So, but okay, where am I going with that, man? And maybe that's going to make someone say that was a pretty good story. But here's my point. Coaches are blessed with some type of authority. No matter what it may be, whether it's Pee Wee League all the way up to the NBA, there's some authority, there's some influence, right? And when you're asking a very great question, Keith, that's an excellent question you're asking. And you're saying, why? Because there's no one there to stop them from doing that. Why are you putting this added pressure on me? Because I am not willing to, as a coach at that time, to take your feeling in regard over my emotional, uncontrollable feeling. If that's a jumble, but right now I'm an emotional wreck coaching you. Right. And this play I've been telling you about week in, week out, and we've been struggling with it. And right when I tell you not to do it, what do? You go right in there and do it. So instead of me having the emotional fortitude or something like mindfulness or some way to be able to not respond to the stimulus, because sometimes there's a stimulus, there's a space in between, and then there's a response. And many times we don't give ourselves a space in between. So as this coach who just went through all that, I am not willing to say, I need to control it. I'm going to just let all of this out, and it gets out there. So that's one of my thoughts why coaches still do that, despite all the excellent reasons you mentioned that they should.
And again, it's kind of a cliche. This is how I'm supposed to coach. This is what I've seen. This is what I've seen on TV. This is how I grew up. Things of that nature. And it's just funny because it to me, I could be totally wrong. And again, I've only been coaching but so long, so I'm not, the authority on coaching. I appreciate it. And so, why would you not allow a player to either play through their mistakes, and talk to them? If they keep on, then fine, bench them, But you don't want to have them looking over the shoulder like we discussed earlier. And it almost seems like it comes from an ego standpoint of because I can, and this is what it is I'm the ruler. Boom, this is the judge. This is the final say. This is how I'm going to run my team, and I'm going to show my authority. Why do that? And again, that seems like selfish in some regards.
Sure.
And so, really, what are you trying to do? You're trying to win, right?
Right.
So, how is that helping you win? Like, you not giving your players confidence. You not, allowing them to play through their mistakes, because, again, especially on a varsity level, college, there's a postseason. And there's a postseason, though.
It's a lot of stake.
So you have time to keep, developing. I remember some years ago I heard they talked about Bill Belichick with the Patriots. He breaks the season, 16 games in NFL season, that he breaks the season into quarters. Got those first 4 games just to keep on working and keep on building.
As far as where we should be.
Oh, exactly. Wow. Just breaking it down into sections of, okay, this is where we should be. This is how we should be doing things. How can we improve upon it?
But that would determine how much I'll lose it over something.
Right. So I think in a varsity, college, NBA level, and I can't speak to the NBA and barely can speak to the college, but that you have a little time to, try to have more teaching moments and playing through mistakes. Because at the end of the day, it's about winning in the postseason. Right. Especially if you're in high school, you're going to the postseason regardless for basketball.
And I'd rather you make this mistake now than then. Keith, I don't know what look I have on my face when you say certain things, but you got to know certain things you say is it's making a light go off for me. You know, we talk about part of this being a public service announcement to be able to help coaches and also be a reservoir of information and data that can help coaches. I think you make an excellent point, because you're going back to your point about I'm the ruler. Could it be sometimes we think because we have all of this authority, that because we have it, we think it's supposed to work? Look, I am the boss, I'm the coach. Because I said it, it should work. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Right.
We're making an assumption that because I've been given this by the AD or by whoever supported me to do it, and you know, that because I'm in this role, what I say will work, as opposed to just because you have this role doesn't mean it's actually going to work, and you have to figure out that. And the last thing I'll say on that, just get your feedback. So many times what I'm hearing from the feedback I'm getting about coaches, coaching millennials in particular, is that, you know, just because you yell and scream doesn't mean you're teaching me. We still keep losing that. Well, I told you what to do. Yeah, but obviously you didn't tell me enough. It's not working.
Right.
You know, so what's your take on that?
Really, I mean, it's an easy thing for us to do. Anybody, whether you're a player, whether you're a parent, whether you're a ref, whether you're a coach, is to blame someone else.
Sure.
And I think when if a coach is thinking that, hey, I said this, so it should work. We run this play, so it should work, or it's going to work if you do it right. Are we blaming someone else? Are we not, again, looking in the mirror, having some reflection, or evolving and devolving? All right, maybe this didn't work. You know, I mean, there's just a lot of different ways to look at it. You know, I think there's just a lot of different ways to look at things and how it should go about. And then, and this is not something just about me. I don't know everything. Again, I will keep repeating that.
No, man, you're humble. You're good, but you got a good perspective. And
I think that part of it is, if it is a coach like that, I think my perspective is the basketball players, football players, volleyball players, they're the ones that make the plays.
They make the plays.
I'm helping you, put you in position. In practice, I'm helping sharpen the skills and prepare us.
Sure.
But however, you're the ones that's making the plays.
Sure.
So, and again, I've lost games because of this philosophy, and I've won some because of it as well, is that I'm not going to control every little situation
and be a super micromanager.
Exactly.
Keith, you've had some really interesting buzzwords, and you probably didn't even recognize that they were, but I've been kind of keeping this theme going when you made a comment earlier about because I'm the ruler. And use another thing about, you know, blame and I'm the authority, you know, and going back to
just real quick, hang on to that. I just wanted to say,
sure.
To me, I think it just goes back to us taking our ego out of it.
Oh, no.
Which Popovich talks about a lot. It's not about you.
Well, this is what I was getting at, and I'm glad you added that, because my response is another political term, or however you want to look at it. It's a quote, but not as long as the one from earlier. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when you are in complete control, when you're the done dada, I'm the boss, I don't want to hear it, don't tell me anything else, that leads to your own type of corruption. So you're thinking that because I'm the boss, I can't do any wrong, when if you're not going through this corruption process, and we all know what corruption is, it's like when you're not your best self, you know, you put yourself in a position where you can't help. So I guess it's almost like that we got to